Okay, let's start the lecture. So we will continue the topic of password authentication. So we finished the last two components, which are like the rainbow table and also one-time password. And then we will look at some other authentication mechanisms, like the two-factor authentication, biometric authentication, and so on. Right. So in the previous lecture, we looked at some basic concepts related to password authentication. Right. So we studied, for example, the how we store password. Right. So we store the hashed password, the transformed password instead of the plain password. And then we also look at some attacks against password. Right. So password is weak because the entropy of password is usually low, so that the attacker can enumerate all the possible passwords by using a dictionary or brute force attack. Okay, so the next part, so basically we will look at, which is also related to the assignment one, is the so-called rainbow table. So remember in the previous lecture we looked at like a dictionary attack or the brute force attack. So in those kind of attack, we assume, for example, the hash password stored in a server may be stolen by an attacker. So attacker may hack into the server and then obtain the password table. So the password table, of course, if we use hash password, then basically the password table does not contain the plain password. Attackers cannot directly obtain the plain password because they can only obtain hash values, and then due to the one-way property of hash, so the attacker cannot directly obtain the password. But they can still do the dictionary or brute force attack. So essentially, for example, the attacker can build a dictionary, and then given a hash value, which is obtained from the compromised hash table, the password table, then you can do a dictionary attack by enumerating all the possible passwords. You hash the password one by one, and then you can check against the hash value obtained. And if the hash value match, the two hash values match, that means the attacker successfully located the password. Right. So this is how dictionary attack can be performed once the hash value is known. However, so this attack may take some time because, say, if you use a strong password, so although the space is not very big, but you may still need maybe a few days or even a few weeks in order to do the brute force, because you need to hash each possible password and compare against the obtained hash value. So the process may take some time to complete. However, so in this case, actually the attacker sometimes they can in order to reduce the time to locate the password, they can actually do some pre-computation. So this is basically where the rainbow table comes in. So the attacker may first prepare a list of passwords, like a dictionary, and pre-compute all the hash values. So password 1, you get hash 1, password 2, hash 2. You just pre-compute the whole list of passwords and the corresponding hash values. Then essentially you can do a sorting. For example, you can sort this pre-computed table based on hash value. So now, once the database, for example, the password table is stolen or compromised, then after obtaining the hash value in the table, then you can just do a quick search, because you don't need to do this hash computation online, because you already finished this computation before you obtain this password table. So you can just do a search in the pre-computed table. Because search can be very fast, right? So even if you have n items, you can do search in log n, because you can do binary search. You can sort the table according to a hash value, then you can do a binary search, which will only need log n, so many steps, right? So in this case, actually, the attacker can quickly identify the hash value in this rainbow table, and then the corresponding password is the correct password. Right, so that's how the rainbow table works. It's essentially a pre-computed password hash table, and then after you obtain a hash value, you do a search. Right, so in this case, actually, the sorting can somehow prevent this kind of attack, because So the sort value actually is unknown before the attacker can compromise the server. So if the attacker, before this server is compromised, before the attacker obtains this hash table, the password table, actually the sort value is unknown. So in this case, basically for each user, you need to guess because there is a password space, and then there is also a space for the sort value. So basically now you need to pre-compute the hash for different combinations between the password and the sort value. So the hash, this rainbow table will become huge, because now you don't just store one hash for one password. You need to store many hash values for the same password, but for different sort values. So in this case, if you want to do this pre-computation for the password and also for the sort value, then the table will become huge. All right, so in this case, actually, if we use the sorting, it can still prevent, in a certain extent, this rainbow table attack. All right, so basically in the rainbow table, when we use a rainbow table, it's a trade-off between storage and computation. So you can do now the search, a real-time search in a very fast way, because you pre-compute the table and then you can do the search very quickly. However, so the trade-off is that now you need to have a lot of storage to store this pre-computed hash table. So that's the trade-off essentially. So you reduce the real-time searching time, but now you need extra storage to store this pre-computed rainbow table. And then the size of the rainbow table can be huge if you have a large dictionary. So in this case, we may use advanced rainbow table. So the advanced rainbow table is basically a so-called hash reduced rainbow table. So instead of just doing the hash for one password, so we will do a so-called reduction function on the hash value. So basically, the hash reduced rainbow table will look like this. So the normal rainbow table, so it's very simple. The normal rainbow table actually is very straightforward, right? So you have a password 1 here, then you hash it, you get hash 1. You have password 2 here, you hash it, you get hash 2. So the number of entries in the rainbow table will be the same as the number of password in the password space. So this is the normal rainbow table. So you can sort this column. Now, given a hash value, you search in this column, you find, okay, this is the hash value you want to search for, and this is the password, right? So it's very straightforward. So, but the storage cost is very high. So this hash reduced rainbow table basically will reduce the size of the storage, the size of this rainbow table. So how to perform this hash and reduce? Basically, we first pick a password. For example, you have a dictionary, right? So you have a dictionary, say, right? So you have a password 1, password 2, password 3, and so on. So you have a dictionary, right? So now you pick a password, you start to build the rainbow table, you pick the first password, you do hash, you get hash value. So now, instead of picking a new password, we do a reduction. So we try to reduce this hash value to a new password, right? So basically you map this hash value to another password. So later I will tell you how to do this mapping. So in reality, this mapping can be done in different ways, depending on how you implement this reduction function. So for the assignment, I will give you a specific requirement how to do this reduction. So basically, you map the hash to another password in this password table. Then you get a new password, say this is the password 2, right? So then you can do the hash again, you get hash 2, you do the reduction, you get password 3, and so on. So you repeat this hash reduction for several rounds. Then basically in this case, you create a chain, right? So you start from password, and then you do hash reduce for a few rounds, then eventually you have the final hash value, and this will create a chain. So this chain actually now captures 3 passwords, but we don't need to store all these items. We only store this one. This is what we will store, and this one. So the head and the tail will be stored, but all the intermediate values, we don't store it in the we don't store them in the this rainbow table. So essentially, the rainbow table only stores the head and the tail for one chain, right? So in this case, basically, this chain captures 3 passwords, but we only store 1 pair of password and hash value, right? So after you finish the first chain, now you pick a new password. So the password has not been captured in this chain. That means that every time you do the reduction function, if you pick a password, basically you need to take this password. It has already been included in the chain, Right, so next time you start a new chain, you pick a password which is not included in the previous chains. Right, you always start with a password which has not been captured by any of the chains. So in this case, for example, you start with password 4. Right, password 4, you do hash reduce again. So you do a few runs, then you again will have a new chain, and then again you only store the head and the tail. Right, so after that, then you pick another password which has not been captured. That means every time you capture a password, you need to tick it. That means that the password already included in one of the chains. So if you repeat this process, eventually all the passwords in the dictionary will be included in all those chains, right? So now basically you can see for these 2 chains, actually we already captured 5 passwords, but we only store 2 pairs. Password 1, hash 3, password 4, and hash 2. And in particular, sometimes you can have collision. So the collision can happen, of course, when you say you hash 2 different passwords, you get collision, but this is less likely because hash is a collision resistant. But when you do the reduction, it is possible to have collision as well. And now, actually, for this kind of collision, the chance will be high because hash value usually is much larger than the size of the password. So hash value, for example, if you use MD5, it will be 128 bit. It's usually larger than 16 bytes. It's much larger than a normal password. So the collision can happen. For example, actually password 2 is captured twice in this list as well as the second list. Right? So in this case, you store 2 pairs, but now you capture 5 passwords instead of 2 passwords. In the original rainbow table, if you store 2 pairs, you can only capture 2 passwords, but now you can capture 5 passwords. So, and the storage actually is the same. So here we only use 2 pairs, but we can have the same effect as 5 pairs in the original rainbow table. Right? So basically this is the process to build the rainbow table. Right? So every time if you pick a password, you need to tick this password. So it's already included in one of the chains. If next time you reduce to a new password, you basically need to tick the password. And for each chain, you start with a password which has not been captured. So this will ensure eventually all the passwords will be captured by all the chains. So now this is the process of building this rainbow table. Right, so then you may ask, how do we do the search? Because the original rainbow table is very easy to do the search. You just sort the column for the hash value, then given a hash value, you do a binary search, you can find the hash value, you find the password. But for this one, how to do the search? So, right, so after you build, say, suppose we only have 5 passwords. So we use these 2 pairs to store the 5 passwords. Then you may ask how to do the search. Suppose, say, now I give you a hash value, say, H3. So suppose this is the hash value you obtain from a compromised a server. You want to know what's the password corresponding to the H3. So basically you can search in this column, the hash value column. You can find, okay, H3 actually appears here. Then you know the previous one will be the password. But you don't store this password directly, explicitly. So then how to find this password? Actually, you can start from the beginning. Because you know, if you start from here, you will reproduce the whole chain. That means If you find H3 here, you know password 3 is in front. So you start from the beginning, you do hash, reduce. Eventually, you will reproduce this H3, then you know this is the password. Right? So this is the first case. If you can directly find this hash value in the column. Then start from the beginning, you can do repeat this hash reduce, you will find this password. And the second case, now suppose I want to search for, say, hash 5, right? So hash 5 is not in this column. That means you cannot directly find H5 here. So in this case, how do you do the search? So basically, if you cannot directly find H5 here, then you can repeat the process. You can do a reduce. Then if H5 is somewhere in the middle of a chain, for example here, if you repeat the reduce process, essentially you will get password 2 again. And then you do hash, you will get H2 again. Right, so although you cannot find H5, but if you repeat the reduce hash, you will get H2. Now you can see H2 is here. So if you find H2 here, you know the password of H5 is also in this chain. Then you can again start from the beginning. Password 4, you hash, reduce, you get password 5. You hash, you get hash 5. You know, okay, so now this is the target. You know the previous one is your password. So basically, every time you start from the beginning, you repeat this process, you will find the target hash, then you find the previous one. You use the previous one as a password. So in this case, we don't need to store like the 5 pairs for 5 passwords. We only need to store 2 pairs. So this is basically the so-called hash reduce remote table. And again, this is a trade-off between computation and storage. It's just in the middle, right? So basically, if you use you don't use the pre-computation, then you don't use rainbow table, then you need to do a lot of computation. If you use a basic rainbow table, you don't need, you only do a search, do a binary search, you can find the result. So in this case, it's basically somewhere in the middle. So you reduce the storage cost, you don't need to store like n pairs for n password. You only need to store maybe n over 2 or n over 3 pairs. But on the other hand, the searching time will be slightly longer than the original rainbow table, because now the searching is not as straightforward as like a binary search. You need to do the searching. For example, you may need to, if you want to search this one, you need to do some steps in order to find this hash value, and then you can find out which chain you should search. So after you get H2, you know this is a chain you need to search. So you start from beginning, then you can find this password. So this is again just a trade-off. So you sacrifice the searching time, but now actually you can reduce the rainbow table size. Right, so this is how this hash and reduce rainbow table works, and you need to implement this one in your assignment 1. Right, so assignment 1 essentially will follow the same procedure I just described here. So I provided a file, which is this Word file. This Word file contains, I think, about 20,000 to 30,000 words. And then we will use all those words to build the password, the dictionary, and then we can build the rainbow table using the dictionary. So this word contains all the passwords we will use for testing your program. And when you write your program, you can extract so a subset of the words, and then you form this password.txt. For example, you can pick just 1,000 words from this dictionary, this word dictionary, and then you put these 1,000 words in the password.txt. That's basically your own dictionary, your password dictionary. So now, after you have the 1,000 password here picked from the words, this file, then you can build the rainbow table here, right? So this is the first step. You do the hash reduce to build the rainbow table for the like a 1000 password. Say you stored in this password.txt, right? So the process is essentially the same as what we just looked at. So in this hash reduced rainbow table, you don't need to worry about collision because sometimes actually you can have collision, right? So in this assignment, to simplify the task, you don't need to worry about collision. For example, say when you reach this password 2, actually when you check this password file, you will notice that okay, password 2 actually has already been captured somewhere. But here you don't need to worry, you just continue this process. Right? So you don't need to handle the collision because handling collision in this case is not easy. It's not an easy task. So I can tell you. You can think about it. If you want to do it, it's not an easy task. So to simplify your task, you just continue. Even password 2 has already been captured before, you just continue this process. So in this case, actually, the number of records, the number of chains may be slightly larger than the ideal case. In the ideal case, if you don't have any collision, then actually the number of pairs you need to store will be minimum. But if you have collision, that means the number of pairs you need to store may be larger. But anyway, so it will still be much better than the rainbow table without reduction. So you don't need to worry about collision when you use this hash and reduce. So you first build all the pairs using hash reduce for all the say 1000 password. That's the first step. Second step is to do the search. So basically we will test your program in two cases. First case, I use a hash value that appear in the rainbow table. That means I pick one password in your list, in the list, and then I hash it. I randomly pick one, I hash it, and then I try to search in your rainbow table. So your program should return yes and the password because it's the password inside the list of the rainbow table. The second case, I will pick another word which is not in the list, and then I hash again, I try to search. So your answer should be no in this case, because the hash of the password I hash is not in the list. So you should not be able to find the password. So I will test your program based on these two cases. Right. So for the first case, I pick one of the password in your password file. The second case, I will pick some password not in your password file. So the search basically will follow the procedure I just mentioned, right? So if you can directly find the hash value, then of course you know. For example, if you find H3, you want to search for a password of H3, you can directly find it here. You know the password is just in front. So you can start from the beginning until you reach this password. You hash it, you get H3, you know this is the password. The second case is slightly more complex. So if you cannot find, say, H5, then you need to do reduce hash. And if you can find it, of course, if you can find here, then you can do the search from the beginning. Say if this one still you cannot find it, right? So another case, for example, say here, if I want to search H4, right? H4. So H4 is not in the column. You reduce it, you get like a password 5 and H5. You search again, H5 is not there. Then you reduce it, then you will get password 2. And then you hash, then you get H2. So in this case, for a particular hash, you may need to do reduce hash several times until you can find the hash value in the column, right? But you know, if you know the way you build this table, you know how many times, how many rounds maximum you perform, then you know like how many rounds here you need to perform to determine whether you can find this password or not. So if you do, if you try sufficient many rounds, still you cannot find a hash value, then you can conclude the password of this one is not in the rainbow table. right? Because here you know how many rounds you perform at most for each chain. So if you repeat this one for sufficiently many rounds, still you cannot find the hash value, you know this one is not in the remote table you just built. So this is the process of doing the search, right? So in the assignment, you need to do this hash reduce for 4 rounds. That means you hash 5 times and reduce 2 times, right? So in this case, so if we do 2 rounds of hash reduce, eventually you will have 3 hash and 2 reductions. So if you do 4 rounds, that means you do like 5 hashes in total. For each chain, you do 5 hashes and 4 reductions. So that's how you do the you generate a rainbow table and how you do the search. All right. So the hash function you use will be MD5, but you don't need to implement this MD5. So if you use Java, you can simply call the library, and if you use C++, you may use some open source implementation of the MD5, but make sure you pick the correct version, so you can do some testing, right? You use like an open source program, then you can just try to run a program on different inputs, and then you can check on some website which provide MD5 hash calculation. You can check whether the program is correct or not. So make sure you use the correct copy of the MD5 function if you use C++. But if you use Java, then you can use the library. And the reduction here is up to you. But in general, so for this assignment, how do we do the reduction? How do we do the reduction? So basically, okay, so the reduction can be done by mapping the hash value to the index of the password, right? So in your password table, actually, in your password table, you have password 1, password 2, until say password, say n, right? So in this case, actually, you can build an index. Say I give a concrete number, say password 1000, right? So you have 1000 in your password.txt. So in this case, how to do the reduction? For example, after you get H1, how to map this H1 to another password here, right? So you can, in this assignment, you can simply use the index. For example, password 1, you can give index 0. Password 2, you give index 1, and so on. So the last one, you have index 999, right? So in this case, you just put the password, say, in an array, right? So in this case, you can have the index from 0 to 999. Then you pick password 1, right? So now password 1 is taken. You take this password, you hash it. So how to do reduction? You just convert this hash value to an integer here, right? So the hash value is for MD5 is 128 bits, like a string. You can treat this string as an integer, or you can take say part of this string, and convert it to an integer, right? So that's what you can do. For example, you can take the last 20 bits, and then you convert this 20 bit to an integer. So after you get the integer, how to map the integer to one of the index here? There are different ways. One simple way is you can do a mode operation, right? Say you take the first 20 bits or the last 20 bits or any 20 bits, but you need to make sure the reduction is consistent. You always use the same method. Say if you use the last 20 bit, next time you also use the last 20 bit of the hash. So for example, here you just take the last 20 bit of the hash. And in this case, then you will get you convert the last 20 bit into an integer, and then you can do the mode operation, right? So the integer is x for the last 20 bit is corresponding to integer x. You can do the mode 1000. If you do mode 1000, you get the remainder, which must be integer between 0 to 999, right? Say x mode 1000 is say 123. In this case, that means when you reduce the hash, you get password number 123. The index 123 here, you get the password or 1 to 4, sorry, because we start from 0. Right, so you can always map a hash value to an integer. And then the integer can be converted to an index of the password file. So in this case, this is one way. As I said, it's up to you how to implement. But this is one simple way to convert, say, a hash value or part of the hash value to an index of the password file. You can do a mode operation. Then you get the integer. This will be the index for your next password. That means actually here password 2 is not the real password. Here is the password corresponding to the index you obtain by doing this operation. All right. So essentially, you find any method that can map this hash value to an index here. Then, given the index, you pick the corresponding password as the reduction output. Right, so the reduction output will be corresponding to the index you reduce from the hash value. So that's how you do a hash reduce in this assignment. Right, so I think that's what I can tell for the assignment. Any question? Any unclear part about the assignment? Any part? Yes?
Regarding the reduction function, right, when you want to change it back to a plain text, right, you mentioned one of the case where you will pick a password that's not within the list and
Yep.
hash it.
Yeah.
So
when you do reduction, you don't need to worry about collision.
okay.
So you pick a new password every time when you start a chain. For example, when you do reduction, actually you found password 2 has already been picked. But here you don't need to worry about this collision. You just continue as usual. So you need to pick a new password which has not been picked when you start a new chain. Okay. When you say reduce, you do this reduction. You find the password, and the password has already been captured in the previous chains. Then you don't need to worry. You just continue this process. So you only pick a new password every time you start a new chain. Okay, because if you want to handle the reduction, the collision here is not that simple.
But my question comes more towards the password that's not within the list. So for example, if the list of passwords is there are 1,000 passwords, right?
Yeah.
And the password that you pick is, for example, 1,001 that's not within the list. And just so happens that your reduction function creates that password.
No, you need to make sure your reduction function will always will produce something within the range, within the, say, 0 to 999. You need to make sure your reduction will not jump out this range. So if you do such an operation, for example, the hash value, you mode 1000, then you can guarantee the result will be definitely from 0 to 999. You will never have a result which is outside the range. Right? So you need to make sure when you do reduction, you always return something within this range. That means you can find the password. Any other question?
If your reduction function is, you stated that you're taking the first